Hey, today I wanted to walk you through setting up and reloading, just kind of the basic things that I do now. I'm by no means a professional, but I've been doing it quite a bit for long range shooting, and I've got it kind of figured out how to reload for me. So I'm going to go through the steps that I take to reload and setting up your reloading press. So this is my RCBS reloading press. I've got an RCBS die for a resizing die, and I'm using a Hornady bullet seating die. So that's the two dies I'm going to use today. So first, I'm shooting a 7mm or reloading a 7mm Magnum. So I look on my RCBS case and it tells me that's a number 5 shell holder. So I'm putting the number 5 shell holder in place for 7mm. To start out, I've got some fired brass here that have just the old primer still in them. So there's a couple of brass. I'm going to walk you through those two brass. The first thing I do, very important, is to get them lubed a little bit. So I'm going to start out with some RCBS case lube. I've also got a can of this one-shot case lube that I use frequently. There's a bunch of different kinds of case lubes. There's also this kind that I've used off and on. Some Hornady unique case lube. But today we're going to try this RCBS spray-on case slick. And just give them a few little sprays here, both on the outside, and I spray a little bit on the inside because it is going to resize the inside as well. So those are lubed up while I set this up. So like I mentioned, put my number 5 shell holder on the bottom of this, and I rotate this all the way to the down position. So the handle's down, the shell holder's all the way to the top. Screw in my resizer, and this is for a full resize. Screw it in, screw it in, screw it in until it hits the die, so it's made contact with the die. I want to raise the die up a little bit and just take maybe an 1/8 of a turn or a little bit further. So now when I rotate the handle down, you can kind of feel it hit and rotate. You'll feel the clicking there, and that will do a full resize. So once again, all the way down plus maybe an 1/8 of a turn more down on your die, and that'll be set up for resizing. So now I got the lubed up case, sprayed it with case slick, put in the shell holder, rotate it down. I can feel a good resizing taking place. Come back up and it'll resize the inside. Sometimes I do that twice, but I shouldn't need to, and that is now resized. Guys, I've got 2 of those 7mm casings now resized. The next thing I do is check them for length. You can find out what the length of these need to be really easily by searching on Google, looking in a reference book. There's a million different ways, but it's pretty important that you get those cases now the right size. So I'm going to grab my tool. I've got a Lyman stainless steel caliper, and I'm going to measure these 7mm brass since I've now fired them once and make sure they're within the spec, and these are. It says they're supposed to be 2.5 inches long in the online manual or my reference manual, and they are both exactly 2.5 inches long. So no resizing needed. But if those were over the spec length, I would then put them through a resizing tool and trim a little bit off of the top. But since I'm not going to do that, we're all set. Now the next step is I'm going to put a little bit of a bevel on the outside and the inside of the top of this. I think that's called chamfering. So I've got a tool. I'll rotate the camera over to see my tool. It's just a Lyman case prep tool. And I'm going to do 3 things. One is I'm going to put a little bit of bevel on the outside of the brass, a little bit of bevel on the inside of the brass, and that'll make for a consistent exiting of my bullet from the brass. So again, outside, a little bit on the inside of a bevel or chamfering, I'm just going to clean it out real quick. Third thing I'm going to do is with my primer cutting tool, I'm going to put it on that one that is the right size and cut it to depth and make sure that my primer seating depth is uniform and the same, and I get the proper primer seating depth. So that is my case prep. Resized it. You saw I set the die up, chamfered the outside and the inside, and then I fixed the primer hole to make sure that it was seated at the right depth and I had a good primer hole. Now, you could inspect the hole here and make sure that we've got a good even hole also, and these both look good. So the hole into the case from the primer pocket is both uniform, clean, and good on both of these bullets. So I'm set there. Hey guys, now I'm going to go to the next step of this, which is dispensing primers into the cases. So I just use this RCBS priming tool. It'll dispense the primer to the right seating depth. I'm using Federal Premium Match Grade large rifle primers, large Magnum rifle primers for my 7mm Magnum. So I just put them in here, press the primer in, got it to the right depth. Get my next one, slide it in there, it just auto feeds one, press it, seat it to the right depth. Now I'm on to my next step. Hey guys, the next step in this reloading is to get my powder dispensed and loaded into my individual casing. So I've got this Lyman powder dispenser. It's not the big size one, it's the small size. I've determined through a series of shooting that 59.5 grains in my 7mm with 162 grain ELDX bullet is what I'm shooting. Shoots the best for me. I get the best group with that and a consistent speed. So I'm going to put in that 59.5 amount of grains. I'm going to set it for repeat, and I'm going to dispense that powder. I'm going to put the two casings I'm going to fill in my case holder. It's dispensed 59.5 grains. I'm going to take it off, place this funnel on the top, and dispense my powder into my case. Okay guys, now I'm on to the next step, which is setting up my bullet seating die. As I mentioned earlier, I'm using a Hornady die for this, for my 7mm Magnum on this RCBS press. Now here's the steps I go through. Number one is I put a not loaded shell case onto there, set my bullet seater on and tighten it just a teeny bit, rotate this all the way down so it's in the down position. Now turn my die down, 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 down until it hits. It's hitting my case. Then I bring it back up slightly so I don't put a crimp on this bullet, because I'm not interested in crimping it. If I do that all the way down and back up without a shell in there, I'm going to smash my bullet. So I don't want to crimp my bullet. So with the case in there, seat the die all the way down till it hits, come back up a little bit. Then you can tighten this. I'm not talking about the bullet seating portion of it yet, just the lower portion. So that will get you the right depth for the die in the press. So now we rotate that up. I'm going to rotate this camera up a little bit so now you can see the top, which is my bullet seating depth. So what I like to do is, if I've already reloaded and I've got the right depth for my gun, I take one of those seated bullets now, take out the spent casing, put a seated bullet in, rotate it down. It doesn't hit, which is good. I've got the seater all the way up because I don't want to seat that bullet any further. Now I screw this down till it just taps, and that should get me really close to my right seating depth using that bullet that I've already loaded. Now if I hadn't already loaded one, I would take this almost all the way up, put a bullet in one that I had powder on, seat the bullet in a little bit, get on my caliper and measure it, and now slowly reduce this down until I get the right length that I've determined for my gun. But that's how you set up that die for seating the bullet. So I hope that makes sense to you. First, a blank case, rotate it all the way down, turn this in until it hits, back it off a little bit or you'll crimp your case, take the bullet seater all the way out, and then screw it in to touch your existing bullet if you've got one set up for the right length. If not, seat a bullet, and then slowly move this down using your caliper and getting it to the right length. So that's it. It is as simple as that. So with that, I'm ready to go. You saw me earlier get the case ready, put the primer in it, put the brass, put the powder in it. Now I'm going to load these with these ELDX bullets, and it's as simple as putting it in there, slowly moving it up, seating that bullet, bringing it out. It passes the eyeball test. It passes the test with my other one. It looks the same length as the other ones I've previously loaded, but I certainly always get out the caliper now and check that length and make sure that it's accurate. And then after every 4 or 5 loads, I check the length again. So I hope that's been a helpful video for you on how to set up and start reloading and kind of the steps that you go through.